December 26, 1980 was the day that Airman First Class John Burroughs' life would change forever. He was on security detail at the Woodbridge Air Force Base in southeast England. Woodbridge and nearby base Bentwaters were both RAF bases that were operated by Americans, with Rendlesham Forest between the two. They were believed to store nuclear weapons. This was during the Cold War and apprehensions were high. That's putting it mildly. The very real possibility of nuclear war on a global scale weighed heavy on the shoulders of Burroughs and the military as a whole. Their job was simple: keep themselves, their country, and their close allies protected. So Burroughs carried out his nightly rounds, inspecting the surroundings for any potential threats. Out of nowhere, a bright light was spotted in the sky. And then another one. Burroughs watched as the lights plunged into the forest near the base. He and his team rushed to the area where they saw it go down. They figured it was a downed aircraft, but what they found was not wreckage. It was otherworldly. It all started at about 3 a.m. John Burroughs and Staff Sergeant Bud Steffens were on watch close to the east gate at the Woodbridge base. The night unfolded sluggishly, yet unease crept in before long. The air felt heavy with static electricity. Then, suddenly, a light plummeted from the sky into Rendlesham Forest. It came to a halt approximately half a mile away from the end of the base's primary runway. Suddenly, another light was seen. The lights were changing different colors on and off: red, blue, green. Initially, they presumed it was a crashed aircraft, but no one detected the noise of impact. Moreover, there was no sound at all. Confused, Burroughs and Steffens went back to the guard shack and called it in. They opted to refrain from broadcasting their report over an unsecured radio channel. They chose to handle the crash discreetly, without attracting undue attention. Keep in mind, this was during the Cold War, and the airmen weren't able to identify what they just saw. Staff Sergeant Jim Penniston held the position of on-duty flight chief at Woodbridge. He and Airman Edward Cabansag proceeded to the east gate to gain a fuller understanding of the situation. The four men concluded that the lights had been a crashed plane, but were confused as to why it didn't make a sound. Something of this nearness to the two bases would have undoubtedly alerted numerous personnel. It would have been extremely difficult to overlook. After checking in with both bases, they discovered that no one at Woodbridge or Bentwater observed or heard anything. They contacted RAF Bodsey and RAF Watton. They also contacted Heathrow Airport to inquire if anyone had reported an aircraft crash in the vicinity. No love. However, something peculiar did appear on the radar. Approximately 15 minutes prior to the lights descending from Rendlesham Forest, a radar operator reported an unidentified object. It disappeared off of radar directly over the base. Then, directives were issued to investigate. The four men drove through the east gate and along a road primarily utilized for logging and hiking. The road took them to a path that went further inside the forest, close to the crash. However, as they started down the trail, their radios started to bug out. Something was messing with the frequencies. The radio remained functional, but had a limited range, with anything beyond a few feet resulting in nothing but static. In the distance, they could make out farm animals becoming agitated, emitting screams similar to a human. Throughout their residence in and around the two bases, they had never encountered anything of this nature. They continued on for a few more minutes until they stumbled upon a small clearing. The moment they emerged from the trees, they were engulfed in a bright burst of blinding light. Despite being in the dead of night, the area was illuminated as bright as day. They shielded their eyes and eventually spotted its source. It was coming from a triangular-shaped craft the size of a small car. It was silent and looked to be hovering just above the ground in the clearing. Upon the men's advancement, the animals ended their cries. Electricity seemed to permeate everything now. Penniston noted feeling it on his skin. As Penniston started toward the craft, he noticed that the air seemed thick, viscous, and hard to walk through, sort of like they were walking in slow motion or walking through water. When Penniston approached the craft, he noticed symbols on it that looked like glyphs engraved on the side. The set of symbols was 3 feet wide and 6 inches tall. He traced his hand along the surface of the smooth, warm craft. The symbols felt rough, like sandpaper. As he pulled his hand back, everything lit up bright white. It took a moment for his vision to recover, but when it did, he quickly reached for his notebook and meticulously recorded every detail, including drawings. This is what he drew while it was still fresh in his memory. After a few minutes, the craft began to lift into the sky. Still silent, taking 2 or 3 minutes to clear the tree level. In his notebook, Penniston talked about the liftoff.
I estimated it to be about 3 meters tall and about 3 meters wide at the base. No landing gear was apparent, but it seemed like she was on fixed legs. I moved a little closer. I walked around the craft, and finally, I walked right up to the craft. I noticed the fabric of the shell was more like a smooth, opaque black glass.
At the spot where the craft had landed, they noticed a few impressions in the ground, but little else. As they returned to the others, Penniston remarked that the experience had lasted for a few minutes. Burroughs stopped, puzzled a little. To him, it felt like only a few seconds, which was strange. When they reached the end of the trail, nobody was there. Cabin Sag, Chandler, and 6 other airmen were quickly driving back toward them, freaking the fuck out. Amidst all the commotion, someone contacted Woodbridge to report that Burroughs and Penniston had been found safe and alive, and to call off the search party. What? Search party? Penniston and Burroughs were confused. They were just a brief stroll down the path and only out of contact for merely a few minutes. However, that wasn't the encounter the others had. After Burroughs and Penniston disappeared into the forest, 45 minutes had passed. Oh shit, lost time! Penniston started experiencing dizziness and felt unsteady on his feet. Not admitting it at the time, this marked the beginning of his vision. According to records, the American military contacted British authorities on December 26, 1 hour after the initial sighting. At 4 a.m., local police were summoned to the scene, but the only lights they could distinguish were from the Orford Nest Lighthouse, several miles away.
We have a sighting of someone who saw unusual lights in the sky. Have sent some unarmed troops to investigate. We are terming it as a UFO at present.
Close to 5 a.m., Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt, then 41 years old and a veteran of both Vietnam and Korea, got to the scene. He had little patience for tales of UFOs and was pissed off his men were being distracted by what he judged as ridiculous. Convinced it was all bullshit, Halt directed a staff sergeant to include details in the logs using ambiguous language. Regardless of what was documented in the logs, by early morning, it appeared that everyone was aware a UFO had landed nearby overnight. Before daybreak, a team of men returned to the site to gather measurements and take photographs. The 3 indentations Peniston and Burroughs observed remained intact and measured 1.5 inches deep and 7 inches in diameter. Given the solidly frozen ground of the British winter, whatever caused these impressions must have exerted tremendous weight. After concluding their data collection, the men returned to base and resumed their duties. Peniston drove home, attempting to rest, but found himself unable to relax. Hell, I wouldn't be able to either. I'd absolutely need a little sippy sip, if you know what I mean. An inexplicable urge pushed him to revisit the landing site, compelling him to obey. Thus, Peniston returned, armed with plaster of Paris to cast molds of the landing marks. His aim was to obtain tangible evidence of his experience, seeking validation to reassure himself that he wasn't losing his mind. On December 27th, the next evening, the base held its annual Christmas dinner with the majority of officers present, including Colonel Halt. During the event, the on-duty shift commander abruptly entered. His complexion was pale and his expression stunned. He swiftly approached Halt and whispered, "Sir, it's back." Halt hastily left the dinner and gathered a team to look into it. The men grabbed flashlights, cameras, and even a Geiger counter to check for radiation. Halt was renowned for carrying a tape recorder with him at all times. He taped the investigation as it unfolded in real time.
We're about 150 or 200 yards from the site. Everything else is just deathly calm. There is no doubt about it. There's some type of strange flashing red light ahead.
Upon reaching the landing site, the 3 indentations in the ground where the craft landed were emitting radiation.
We found a small blast, what looks like a blasted or scrubbed up area here. We got very positive readings. See, is that here the center? Yes, it is. This is what we assume would be the dead center.
The trees surrounding the site displayed discoloration and peculiar abrasions were evident on their trunks.
About 5 feet away, about 3.5 feet off the ground. There's a round abrasion on the tree about 3.5, 4 inches in diameter. It looks like it might be old, but strange as a crystalline pine sap has come out that fast.
Halt directed the team to collect samples from the trees for analysis, emphasizing the need for caution as the trees were also emitting radiation elevated but not deadly. Thermal imaging of the scene revealed that both the trees and the landing area were warmer than the surrounding environment.
You're getting readings on the tree you're taking samples from on the side facing the suspected landing site. 4 clicks max. Up to 4. Interesting. That's right where you're taking the sample now. 4. That's the strongest point on the tree? Yes, sir. If you come to the back, there's no clicks whatsoever. No clicks at all on the back. It's all on the side facing the... Interesting. 3 trees in the area immediately adjacent to the site within 10 feet of the suspected landing site were picking up heat reflection off the trees.
Shortly before 2 a.m., something once again startled the animals in Rendlesham Forest.
We're hearing very strange sounds out of the farmer's barnyard animals. It's very, very active, making an awful lot of noise. There's an pigmentation. You just saw a light? Yes, sir. Where? Right in this position here, straight ahead, in between the tree. There it is again. Watch, straight ahead off my flash right there. There it is. Hey, I see it too. What is it? We don't know, sir.
A tiny red light emerged amidst the trees, causing the animals to fall silent and enveloping the area in an eerie calm. The crimson light hovered above the clearing before gradually weaving its way through the trees, prompting Halt and a few companions to pursue it.
Weird. It appears to be maybe moving a little bit this way. Yes, it's better than it has been. It's coming this way. It is definitely coming this way. Pieces of it are shooting off. There is no doubt about it. This is weird.
Now 2 lights emerged, emitting yellow sparks as they oscillated back and forth, resembling a blinking eye.
Okay, we're looking at the thing. We're probably about 200 to 300 yards away. It looks like an eye winking at you. It's still moving from side to side. And when you put the star scope on it, it sort of has a hollow center, a dark center. It's like the pupil of an eye looking at you and winking. And the flash is so bright to the star scope that it almost burns your eye.
Then the situation escalated. Halt's voice could be heard on the tape, shouting that a bright beam of light had struck the ground a mere 10 feet ahead of his team.
Here he comes from the south. He's coming toward us now. Now we're observing what appears to be a beam coming down to the ground. This is unreal.
The light was likened to a laser beam. While it didn't cause any damage, the men had the impression that it was scanning for something. Probably nukes. Halt's team checked the spot on the ground where the light was with a Geiger counter and got high readings. To this day, it remains uncertain whether there were nuclear weapons stored at the twin bases. There were. Nonetheless, this incident would merely be one of numerous UFO encounters reported at nuclear facilities. Local police were inundated with reports of peculiar lights across Suffolk County. However, as swiftly as they appeared, the Rendlesham UFOs vanished. The witnesses were left bewildered with no answers, only questions lingering. Yet they were left with more than mere inquiries. This is a copy of the memo Halt sent to the British Ministry of Defense about the event. The MOD never sent a response to it. Moreover, the United States Air Force denied it even happened for a long time. In the months following the incident, Burroughs, Peniston, and others began to suffer from health complications. Burroughs recalled the elevated radiation levels in Rendlesham Forest and requested his medical records from the Air Force. However, his request was denied, even years after his retirement from service. Well, that's fucked up. At one point, the military even refused to acknowledge Burroughs' service, considering all information about him to be top secret. That's even more fucked up. Doctors later determined that the source of Burroughs' injuries was broadband non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation. That's a fucking mouthful. That's what she said. This could happen through exposure to ultraviolet, infrared, or high-powered microwave energy. Burroughs experienced deteriorating eyesight, throat issues, and developed a heart condition. Years later, a specialist informed Burroughs that his symptoms were consistent with those seen in individuals exposed to high levels of radiation. The military was compelled to recognize the situation. The U.S. government ultimately acknowledged that the servicemen had endured significant health issues and some were granted medical disability. However, many of Burroughs' medical records remain classified to this day. Sergeant Jim Peniston also suffered after effects from the UFO encounter. He was forever changed following the flash of white light he witnessed while touching the craft. That same night, as he reviewed his notes and diagrams, he began to feel nauseous. Subsequently, he experienced visions of ones and zeros with no comprehension of their significance or the events unfolding within him. Nevertheless, the numbers were so vivid that he felt compelled to jot them down. The day after his encounter, he did just that. Strangely, the more he transcribed, the more his condition improved. Eventually, the visions ceased altogether. Jim stored his notebook and didn't revisit it for 3 decades. He had completely forgotten about scribbling those ones and zeros. In 2010, during an interview, he retrieved his notebook with the intention of showcasing the symbols he witnessed on the craft. As he flipped through the pages, he stumbled upon the ones and zeros. The interviewer paused, asking, "Wait, what's that?" Flippant, Peniston said, "Oh, that was data downloaded to me from the UFO." Peniston was questioned if it was binary code, but he was unfamiliar with the term. For 3 decades, Jim Peniston had a binary message implanted into his mind by a UFO, unknown to him. Consequently, they forwarded the numbers to a computer specialist for analysis, without providing any context. Astonishingly, the technician couldn't believe his eyes. It appeared to be a message from the future. Here is the content of the message. Exploration of humanity. Continuous for planetary advance. Eyes of our eyes. Origin year 8100. And if that doesn't freak your shit, check this out. The remaining message is a list of coordinates for locations all over the world. Caracol, Brazil. Sedona, Arizona. The Great Pyramid of Giza. The Nazca Lines in Peru. Mount Taishan in China. The Temple of Apollo in Greece. Adding yet another twist, the final location is called the Origin. This location is currently located northwest of Ireland in the Atlantic Ocean. However, it might not have always been underwater. There is an island called High Brazil that was there at one time. It's often called the Celtic Atlantis. High Brazil is a phantom island, a term used for an island that is depicted on maps for a certain time period, but is later discovered to be non-existent. High Brazil was depicted on maps for centuries, including the renowned Piri Reis map, which was based on significantly older maps. Extensive searches by researchers and archaeologists have been conducted for the island, with evidence suggesting that the island may have once existed in the area. Shallow water shelves have been identified at Porcupine Bank, northwest of Ireland, with similar formations found at Rock Hall further north. All the sites mentioned in the binary code are recognized as highly spiritual places, alternatively described as gateways to other dimensions or planes of existence. Dude, that's sick! As a result, Jim Penniston doesn't perceive the Rendlesham UFO as extraterrestrial. Rather, he believes it originated from humans. Specifically, it was an interdimensional craft with a message from humans 6,000 years in the future. Theoretical physicist Professor Ronald Mallet stated that if you ever wanted to send a message through time, you would do it with binary code.
I showed that a string of subatomic particles or neutrons could be arranged so that some point up while others point down, representing zeros and ones. These zeros and ones can then encode a binary message which could be sent into the past or the future.
The theory of UFOs being time travelers is also becoming increasingly prevalent regarding the recent UFO activity. I lean heavily in that direction myself. NASA is rather ambiguous in its explanations. Recently, they stated that there's no evidence suggesting that any UAPs are of extraterrestrial origin, yet they still remain uncertain about their nature. To me, it seems like NASA entertains the possibility that UAPs may not be from another planet, but rather from our own. And if humans can gain the ability to time travel, then there's a very good chance aliens can too. Therefore, the Rendlesham Forest UFO may be aliens that are time traveling. Perhaps an ancient humanoid civilization resided on Earth for thousands or even millions of years, and they are now revealing themselves. Perhaps, as Jim Penniston believes, we are being frequented by our future selves. The significant question remains, why? Why now? It seems as though they're attempting to alert us of something crucial. Furthermore, UFOs seem to exhibit a keen interest in our activities, particularly in our utilization of nuclear technology. The warning appears to be quite grave. Therefore, let's hope that these UFOs truly originate from outer space. If not, then they could be cautioning us about a potential catastrophe looming ahead. If the warnings are indeed from us in the future, then it suggests that the disaster they fear has already occurred, and they're trying to correct it. Given the current state of affairs in the world, there may be no way to prevent it. The Rendlesham Forest Incident boasts a wealth of evidence, including physical evidence, audio recordings, photographs, and numerous high-ranking U.S. military witnesses. I know, this sounds crazy as fuck. Well, like many things, yesterday's crazy is today's fact. As this story continues to unfold, who knows what else we'll learn about as government's UFO programs slowly declassifies more evidence and documents. This story is very fluid, as we're finding out more details all the time. The evidence is staggering. There are official records of an unknown object in Rendlesham Forest on December 26th and December 28th, 1980. Pictures of broken tree branches and scuffed up tree trunks with elevated levels of radiation. The 3 indentations in the frozen ground and the center of where the craft was also displayed high levels of radiation and heat. 14 military personnel, along with many civilians, witnessed and described the exact same thing. The dramatic tape recording from the hard-nosed, no-nonsense, skeptical Colonel Halt. The binary code that Penniston could see in his mind's eye but had no idea what it was or said. The cryptic message and locations it points out. The Rendlesham Forest Incident truly is one of the most fascinating UFO encounters of all time. Before you go, I want to give you a time-traveling UFO thank you for watching this far into my video. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. You are the heartbeat of my channel, and I can't thank you enough. If you want, go ahead and tap that subscribe thingy here. I'll give you a second. Awesome! And if you want to support me even more, click on this similar video right here. You'll love it. Until next time, stay creepy!